Purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There are 2 opportunities for public participation during the meeting as indicated in agenda item 5 and 10. Please submit a comment request card immediately if you wish to address the board during those portions. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Do we have to?
Trustee Rice, would you guide us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My name is Yolanda Charles, and I'm the board president and trustee. To my right,
Daryl B. Joyce, Vice President of the Board.
Good evening, I'm Leslie Love Smith, Board Secretary.
Charles Hicks, Board Treasurer.
Michael Poole, trustee.
Eddie Robinson.
Alicia Rice, board trustee.
John Charlie, Board Representative.
Shannon Harper, Board Representative.
Keith Hudson, Board Representative.
Derek Lopez, Interim Superintendent.
Vicki Hall, Associate Superintendent of Human Resources.
Kate Dankovich, Associate Superintendent of Administrative Services.
Holly Szynski, Interim Associate Superintendent of Instructional Services and School Performance.
Scott Toko, Director of Operations.
Lisa Freeman, Director of Support Services.
And the staff supporting us is from M1 Studios, Mike Madigan, Jeff Wolka, Marlita Gamble. Also for technical assistance, Ms. Paulette Gardner, Mr. Ron Salad, and recording minutes, Nicole Christian. All right, just following along with our agenda, item number 2. Was there anything that board members, I could start with Ms. Rice, anything I guess we could also look at this as old or new business for the board. Anything for you?
Nothing. I'll wait to put it in the order.
Ms. Robinson?
Same.
Likewise.
Nothing at this time.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Well, great. That leaves me some time. So the first thing I wanted to bring up would be, grab my notes real quick. The first thing is going to be with regards to the Oakland County School Board Association board meeting that I attended last week, the meeting before the meeting. And just wanted to reiterate, if I could, about our legislative committee portion of OCSBA. And really, what I found out was that usually we are supposed to select a delegate at our organizational meeting to participate as a legislative person. We haven't done that. Really, it's kind of been just whoever wants to go, kind of voluntary, but it messes up kind of the position where if 2 or 3 of us go and they call for a vote of some sort, it would kind of be skewed. And there's actually policy with OCSBA for that. And so, having said that, I wanted to entertain any suggestions, but certainly I did want to point out that Trustee Robinson tends to go to those meetings quite regularly, and if she had it in her schedule of availability to attend, she would definitely be someone I would like to recommend for that, if that were something she'd be interested in.
Yes, I've been attended, and I will continue to attend.
And so with nods, of course, just want to make sure, and so again, this is the Legislative Committee. They meet the second Wednesday, pretty much up throughout the year, up at Oakland Schools. And again, there's actually rewards tied to attendance for that. And so we missed out this year on scholarships due to us really not having it nailed down who would attend and how often. So that actually segues myself right on into Advocacy Institute. I'd like for us to nail down who's going to go, who's going to be attending that. I think one person did say that they were interested in going that I spoke to, but definitely before the next meeting, let's have nailed that down so that Ms. Christian can begin with any kind of reservations. The superintendent evaluation slide. And so, I mean, it probably came in your mail, your snail mail, but just in case, I did want to highlight the facilitated superintendent evaluation tool that MASB provides, and wanting to just offer that these are the folks who will be helping facilitate that. Also to note that the School Advance tool is very much like the MASB tool. A couple of representatives from MASB were going to try to be here today, just to briefly comment on the similarities of the two. But just wanted to make sure that we knew that that was coming up, and just to get buy-in from the board on possible dates. So I think Ms. Rice had suggested a doodle that Nicole could facilitate to figure out the dates, and then to also consider not having it done, I mean, the rationale behind perhaps not completing it in December, maybe a different month, because MDE requires it be done by June. Most school districts do it by December, but because we have a late start, just wanted to the board to entertain that. Any thoughts or questions on that? And then, of course, there's still time for discussion later as well. The curriculum committee update with Ms. Robinson, Ms. Rice, if you could just make sure to get the dates to the board members just for insight, so if people from the community want to attend those. Excuse me, back that up. The committee, in terms of if other board members are just interested in your progress, things of that nature. So that's what I meant by that. And then I just wanted to follow up with Mr. Hicks about pre-search activities. Were we pretty okay with our January decision with regards to MASB? No need for pre. I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page on that. I didn't want it to be hanging out there. All right. So, moving along. We have staff and student recognition. We will start with students from Southfield High School for the Arts and Technology, who are here with their art instructor, the one and only Molly McNeese, to share creative art projects. Students.
Parents, you can clap. If I could have my students line up, and if there's any students from University High School with teacher Miss Julie Burgos, please come forward. Thank you very, very much. Again, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mrs. Molly McNeese. I am the new ceramics instructor at the Southfield High School for Arts and Technology. And arts being that I teach with 3 other incredible arts professionals, and my forte is clay. I also teach Foundations 1, which is our beginning foundations class, where we learn the elements and principles of design. And behind our wall are 2 examples of portraits of value using the grid method in pencil. And the students took a selfie, or I took a selfie of them, and they took that photograph and printed it on the printer and used a very ancient technique that's about 6,000 years old and transferred their image to the image on the paper. The second image you see that's very black is an ink portrait done by using the same portrait and transferring it from the projector onto their paper and with using a pencil, and then using India ink and Q-tips to look at the values, and that was our value study. I was so proud of my students because each one is very unique, just like them, and their portraits are displayed down here, and also upstairs there's 5 portraits at the top of the stairs. I also have on display in front of our board members some of our first examples of pottery. This was their first assignment, monster bowls, bowls with feet. And the second assignment, I have an outstanding freshman student, and she started her house early, so it's available for today's show. And it is a slab project for them to create their own homes. Again, in elementary and middle school, we have some wonderful opportunities for our teachers to teach clay. However, sometimes the students only get 1 or 2 clay projects. And so these are from students who have little knowledge of clay, and they're showing some of their effort into one of the first assignments. And I can't wait to bring to you in the spring some of our 18-inch pottery that we're creating right now with our clay whistles and such. I would like my students to introduce themselves, say what year you are, and what you're going to be in the future. So here's my students from A&T and University High School. Say good evening, my name is. Go ahead. You're line up.
Molly.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Sierra Murphy. I'm in 12th grade. And when I get older, I want to be a software engineer. Southfield A&T.
Good evening. My name is Taja Willis. I'm a 10th grader, and when I grow up, I want to be a special effects makeup artist.
Good evening. My name is Candace Walker. I go to Southfield A&T. I am in the 10th grade, and when I get older, I want to go into cosmetology.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Hunter Hamlin. I'm in 12th grade, and I want to do cinematography.
Good evening. My name is Dushan. I'm gonna try to be an architect. I'm in 12th grade. I go to Southfield.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Shelley. I go to Southfield A&T. I am a 9th grader, and when I grow up, I want to work in 2D animation.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Charles Allen. I go to Southfield. I'm a 10th grader, and I want to be an animator for Pixar.
Oh, boy. Be specific. Claim it.
Good evening. My name is Sky McMiller. I'm a 9th grader, and I want to be a fashion designer.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maya Robinson. I'm a senior. I go to Southfield A&T, and I want to be a physical therapist.
Good evening. My name is Keith Hudson. I'm a senior at university, and I want to be a gastroenterologist.
And I just wanted to let the parents know that thank you for supporting the arts in Southfield Public Schools, because this is a result. This is just the beginning of the year. And I am proud to announce that we were just awarded 5 scholarships to the Birmingham Bloomfield Arts Center for their Art Bridge program. I have one of the recipients here. Charles, raise your hand. And Charles received, yes. So Charles received a scholarship for art classes there until he's a freshman in college, and the scholarship is worth over $2,000. And they helped mentor him and build his portfolio up for scholarships for college. So I'm very proud of him. And Ms. Bergas and I would like to thank for all the support for our arts, and we are glad you enjoyed our artwork in the boardroom. Yes, ma'am.
Would any of that wonderful art be for sale?
Soon. Soon, when they show in galleries after they graduate, because I know a lot of the mothers in here are waiting for their bowls and their portraits. Thank you. All right, thank you. Go ahead and shoot. Go ahead this way. No, Hunter. Go ahead. Say thank you very much.
While these students are shaking our hands, would their parents please stand?
Congratulations. Good job. Congratulations. Good job. So you know where you're going, right? Good job. Congratulations. Congratulations. Good job. Congratulations. Good job, brother.
You can do it.
Yeah,
Good job. All right. You can do it.
Keep up the great work. My board matters first.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
All righty. Excellent information for us as a community.
Yes.
So the next student and staff recognition portion is none other than Ms. Maureen Gertie Andrews, Ms. Maureen Gertie Andrews has been honored as Southfield Public Schools Teacher of the Month. Let us watch the video.
Teaches with her heart.
Calming.
Pretty nice.
Mindful. Compassionate. All about student success. describe Gertie Andrews as the epitome of what you call a teacher, leader, and a lifelong learner.
She will answer any question that I ask her, like at any time.
When she's talking to the students, she understands that the students have different levels of education and understanding, and she kind of separates that within her classroom. She puts them in smaller groups to give them that personal touch at the level that they're at in her class.
She does everything that she possibly can to make sure that students are on track with their learning.
Now I can read a little better and I can dig deeper better into reading.
It appears as though she tries to take the student where the student is, find out the strengths, the weaknesses, and build on those weaknesses through the strengths.
She always explains stuff a whole lot.
What she's done was give them a foundation and also the self-confidence they need in her teaching skills.
One thing that just really impressed me about her just this week, she took a personal day, but we had Oktoberfest. And I turned around during Oktoberfest and Maureen Gertie was working in the kitchen passing out food. And I looked at her and I said, "Miss Gertie, I thought you were out today." And she said, "I'm here to support my staff. I will do anything I need to do."
She comes to kids' birthday parties.
She'll send me text messages to encourage me throughout the day.
And she wants to strive to encourage them to be more and look within themselves.
She makes me want to be a better person by taking what other people say into consideration and trying to help them, just like she helped me.
Former students she'll take in if they need a place to go.
This is her calling. She was meant to be an educator.
You can never tell if she's had a bad day.
She doesn't realize how great she is.
I can't imagine a staff without her.
She's a wonderful person.
I have been teaching close to 30 years. Every one of my teaching years has been with Southfield Public Schools except for my very first year. Didn't really decide to become a teacher. I was called to it. Took that pre-placement, it was actually a 5th grade in Ann Arbor Public Schools, and have loved it ever since. There's a lot that goes into exceptional teaching. The first and the foremost, I believe, teaching has to come from the heart. You have to love what you're doing, but even that's not enough. You have to be passionate about the learners. I have years of experience in training, but I approach it as, what am I going to learn today? One of my favorite sayings is, where I am is an okay place to be. It's just not an okay place to stay. So I've worked hard to be the teacher I am today, and tomorrow I'll be a better teacher. My favorite part of teaching is the smiles and the ahas and just the excitement of learning. There's a grandparent in our district that says that his grandson came to me not reading in 5th grade and left a reader. I get emotional about that. Sometimes it's being in the right place at the right time to just see a child bloom. When I found out I was Teacher of the Month, I was embarrassed. I'm honored and I'm humbled because I've been so blessed to be here in Southfield Public Schools.
Ms. Gertie Andrews, thank you so much for being part of our MacArthur family. You have taught me so many things about being humbled, about being gracious, about being kind and caring. I truly love you as a person. You are a phenomenal educator, and you are so deserving of this award.
I hope that you have a wonderful career.
I appreciate all that you've done for my older children, Christian and Jaden, and I look forward to you having Remington in your class to teach him the same way you taught the other two, because they're doing excellent.
Thank you, Ms. Gertie Andrews, for being a really good teacher. I'm going to miss you when I go off to 6th grade.
Thank you for being a part of the MacArthur family, and thank you for welcoming me as the new assistant principal of the school. I truly appreciate you and love you.
You're an awesome teacher.
Thank you so very much for all of the years that you've shared.
I admire your tenacity, the way you educate children. I've personally learned a lot just by watching you and talking with you.
Just thank you for all that you do. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you're attempting to do. We are really pleased at this time, and I know I am, that you are in my grandchild's life.
It's been a pleasure to spend 23 years working with you through the highs and the lows of our school life and our personal life. I'm happy to call you a friend and honored to call you a coworker.
And I just want to just appreciate her and respect her and admire her for all things she has done for all kids at this school, for now and forever.
I appreciate having you as my 5th grade teacher. A few years ago, during my years at MacArthur, you have pushed me to challenge myself and helped me with self-confidence. I also remember having you as my track coach. You would always tell me, don't give up. Although those words are cliche, they meant much more as you said it. So, to you, I have a great foundation. Thank you for all that you've done. That's been Christian. She's currently a 12th grader at university. Miss Gertie Andrews had the ability to open the minds of children to new experiences. When I was in this class, I was always looking forward to what happened next. The answer was always an interesting one. I remember one day when she introduced us to her pet snake for science and showed us the food chain and how it worked as the snake ate a mouse. That was both interesting and a fun way to learn. I enjoyed the time I spent with her, which is why I feel that she deserves all of the accolades. That is from my son Jaden, who is now an 11th grader. Miss Gertie Andrews, thank you so much for all of the years of your service.
So as Ms. Gertie Andrews goes to the microphone and gives us a few words, I want to take a point of personal privilege. I was that grandfather whose grandson she taught to read. And she not only taught him to read, she might have saved his life. So thank you.
Thank you all. I am embarrassed. It's not about me. It's about our darlings. And I have been blessed and honored to be here in Southfield and in the community of Lathrop Village to work with incredible colleagues and parents, and most of all the children that have taught me so much. And so I just say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful stuff. I'm just going to take a hair of privilege. I see a guest that Mr. Young, if you wouldn't mind just coming to the podium we're going to do 2.5 to 3 minutes today. But I shared something with members of the board via email. You don't have to have known this prior to Mr. Young's little introduction here, but it's something that was really heavy on my heart as it relates to science and mathematics. And I'd like to eventually connect you with our superintendent, Trustee Rice, Robinson, Smith, anyone else who might be interested in helping us tackle some of these metrics. Mr. Young. And a little brief introduction of yourself as well.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Charles. Hi, my name is Mr. Keith Young. I am the founder of Ecotech Lab. I run research laboratories around the country for young inventors. So I have a laboratory in Midtown Detroit, and we're doing a lot in that part of the world. One of the interesting facts about our lab is that over the last decade, We maintain 100% proficiency on the MSTEP, the FCAT, and the MESA. So that's Maryland, Florida, and Michigan. This past school year, we raised almost $1 million in STEM scholarships for 6 students. What we're trying to do is find a way to help school districts not only unleash the talent that's in the school, but really, what I just saw with recognizing your teachers, recognizing greatness. I mean, this young lady was really doing it, and it was shown in multiple areas. So this week we're doing interviews in our lab for research positions. The research that we do in our labs is with the United Nations, so we always work on things that have a global footprint. I started the lab almost 12 years ago, and it was because one of my students said, hey, you know what, Mr. Young, I want to be great at everything I do. I said, what do you want to be? She said, I want to be a pediatric neurosurgeon. She's at Johns Hopkins now.
All right.
And I had to walk her to the door. So I think the game plan is science is important. We know we're struggling a little bit in the state of Michigan, and hands-on science and research-based learning is just as critical. So thank you, Ms. Charles, for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you very much. All righty. So it looks like we're at item 4, which is a gift to the Southfield Public Schools Education Foundation. Dr. Kinson Siver, mayor of the city of Southfield and longtime supporter of the district, has donated $1,000 to the Southfield Public Schools Education Foundation. The SPS Education Foundation supports the mission of the district and enhances educational opportunities for our students. We thank Mayor Siver for his continued support of student achievement. That takes us right into item number 5 from our agenda. That is public participation. If you wish to address the board regarding a school-related issue that has not yet been resolved by school administrators, please submit a comment card immediately. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and will be referred to an administrator or interim superintendent for follow-up. Complaints concerning employees should be brought to the attention of the school principals or other administrators before coming to the board. As a matter of fairness, speakers with complaints against individuals are asked not to mention persons by name. Your cooperation is appreciated. Excuse me. Ms. Janice Richardson, and following her, Ms. Dory Bryant.
Ms. Richardson Norman, 30284 Southfield Road, 48076. Once again, I'm addressing the board who never responds back to my emails, which I sent Friday, October 20th, to 6 out of 7 of the board members, with the exclusion of Mr. Hicks, because I was not able to locate the email or it did not go through. So I want to know why, after nearly a month, no one, including the interim superintendent, never responded back in reference to my special needs son. And the only person, and it was CC'd to Ms. Freeman. She replied back. No one followed up. I'm not surprised. So I would like to know why out of 6 out of 7 of you, no one contacted me. But you get a lot of money off my special needs child. Remind you, whose teeth is messed up due to last school year. So can y'all answer that? I thought not. But I would not ever vote for none of y'all.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
What's the email about?
Thank you, definitely. I see Ms. Bryant coming up. I thought I heard a question, but one thing I can say.
That's a question. Why y'all didn't respond back?
I thought I heard a question from Trustee Smith.
Right. I was asking if you could just share what the protocol is.
Why didn't anybody, 6 out of 7 of y'all did not respond back? Why?
Thank you. Someone else?
That's all you're gonna ever say. Thank you. That's why I would never vote for none of y'all.
Go ahead, Ms. Rice.
They did.
Did you have something else, Ms. Rice? I do recall seeing it to my board members just in conversation here, and I do see that a staff member from our district replied. Rarely, if ever, would we enter in.
I said a board member, not Ms. Freeman, a board member.
That is our protocol. Our paid staff are responsible for following up.
So don't
Ms.
pass her, don't
Bryant.
don't do nothing.
Thank you so much. Ms. Bryant.
Hi, good evening. Dory Bryant, 20150 Harbor Lane, Southfield. I have a few items that I wanted to mention. The first one is, I'm so sad that Ms. McNeese left, but I wanted to say my daughter, who is a senior this year, has changed her idea of what she wants to do in college now, and she's changing it to an art major because of Ms. McNeese. So I wanted to kind of say that since she was here tonight, but I did see her earlier in the day. So I wanted to thank the school board, number one, for the purchase of the girls varsity swim team championship swimsuits. They were purchased for our girls for the championship in Oxford. Just wanted to say thank you. We really appreciate it. They really looked like a team out there. Okay. The only negative thing about that was that they were Lathrop colors, black and red. They weren't the red, white, and blue. So that was the only negative, but you know what? They're going to have it for next year. We had 3 relay teams that went to the finals and 3 individuals, including my daughter, that went to the swim, to the finals. So that's very good for their Southfield ante for our small, 8 girls on our swim team. So that was good. I wanted to say, I was at the school today for the lockdown. I happened to be in the counselor's office. I wanted to say the staff in the counseling office and where I was at, everything was handled very calmly. So I wanted to say that was a positive note in my experience at the school today. I even walked my daughter to her art class. Everything seemed so normal and calm that I was very confident for my daughter to stay at the school today, the remainder of the day. Not really knowing what was going on, and that was good that I didn't know what was going on during the time, but I wanted to say that all the, the staff handled the job very professionally, and I was, real good with that. I wanted to mention that reason why I was up at the school today was my daughter's schedule got changed in the middle. I don't know how many weeks, 10 weeks we've been in the school, that all of a sudden her classrooms got changed. So she was kind of thrown a little off, so I was up at the school today trying to, figure out why they would do this to my daughter in the middle of the school year like this. So, so nice meeting with the counselor. So I wanted to say that, that their open door policy really is nice. I only got 30 seconds left. I wanted to mention that there was a school bus incident at my daughter's school where one of the students on the bus threw out a backpack in the window. That bus driver's been having a number of problems with the kids on the bus, standing up, dancing, yelling back at the bus driver. I'm just concerned about the safety on the buses. I did email the transportation, didn't get a response back, but I didn't really expect one. I just wanted them to make them aware of the situation on the bus and, the safety of the kids. So, 2 seconds, thank you.
Sorry, do we know the bus number?
You want to know the bus number? 17.
Also, Dory, can you share some photos of the girls in the new swimsuits?
I will do that.
Thank you.
I will send it to the school board. Thank you. Miss Kristen, is it Beyond? Yes, Biondo. And following Miss Biondo is Tamika Miller. That's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Biondo. I live at 2017 North Wilson in Royal Oak, Michigan. I'm just here tonight in the interest of, I know we have tried to shift really hard this year towards being open and trusting. So I'm just sort of sharing where the teaching staff is at school. So we had an interesting PD yesterday where we talked a lot about the why of things. And the why of teachers coming to school is because we love to teach and we love kids. And I know that there's no other reason anybody would do this job. I could go into the details of what we do every single day. I could go into the details of what we dealt with today, and thank you to that parent who just said that everything was handled professionally because we were trying our darndest. But so yesterday, November 13th, was my 13th year of teaching in Southfield Public Schools. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe what they say about number 13 is true. Because yesterday, We were told by our union representation that the negotiations for our contract that we thought had been going exceptionally well and had a lot of confidence in were not going well any longer. And we heard that the Secretaries Union settled their contract. We had so much hope and so much optimism at the beginning of this year. And we've just sort of been told that suddenly things have changed and things aren't looking as good as they were a month or two ago. So, you know, I left my staff meeting yesterday and I saw that same dark cloud over my staff that I saw last year, all year. And, sorry. You know, we're working so hard, our bills are going up, our pay is not. I had to go take out a loan to keep my own 2 kids in daycare. And I'm not going to compromise their education. That's not going to happen. And I don't want to compromise my students' education either. But we're really backed into a corner here and we don't know what else to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Biondo. Ms. Miller.
Good evening. Excuse me. Tamika Miller, 16220 Templar Circle. Just to kind of piggyback off of what Dory said about the lockdown at Southfield A&T today, I just wanted some clarification on the overall protocol because I did receive a text as I was being prepared for surgery from my younger daughter who does not attend Southfield A&T. So I was kind of curious as to know how she knew about it. I immediately, before I went into surgery, went on Click on Detroit, you know, just to see if there was any kind of breaking news. So that was one issue. The other thing was, I know that there was one Southfield police officer at Southfield A&T. I'm not sure if he's still there. I did call the school probably about a month or 2 ago because someone gave me another officer's number about some erratic behavior in the parking lot at A&T in the morning, where a student driver almost ran over several students as they were entering the building. I never received a call back. I'm not sure why, but I think it's really important. You know, there are a lot of kids who are walking into the building, pans dropping off, and with that type of erratic behavior in the mornings, anything can happen. So if you guys can give me a little feedback on that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Miller, did you say you contacted the school?
I did.
Okay.
Ms. Miller, is your phone number on the card? Yes, it is. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I just would like to address one point that Ms. Miller had made. She made an inquiry, how did her daughter know? Unfortunately, I can't say how she found out, but I can tell you I witnessed firsthand a lot of miscommunication via social media. A lot of people took rumor without verifying fact and putting things out on Facebook, Twitter, that various things were happening, but no one had confirmed. So unfortunately, parents are getting information second, third, fourth hand, and it's miscommunicated. I can't speak, well, I can speak to the protocol of the policy, but I'll defer that to the administration for that official response. All I can say is I reached out to some of those people who put things out there and told them, you know, you need to really remove that post because you're going to get a lot of people alarmed unnecessarily. You know, I don't want to perpetuate some of the miscommunication, but we have to do better at governing ourselves at times on wanting to be informative, but you don't verify to see what actually has or has not happened. So I'm sorry that you had to hear it from your child as opposed to other sources, because I know as a parent of a child at SAT, I did receive an email from the district, you know, of course, as well as I've received information internally, but I believe that we do have some good policies in place to inform. It's just unfortunately sometimes people beat us to it, unfortunately.
We're going to veer just on that very note. Instead of waiting for the superintendent's report, Mr. Lopez will have a few more words about this.
So good evening, Ms. Miller, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. I will tell you that there are protocols in place, and the staff at the school exercise themselves perfectly and professionally in that space. The issues, however, around communication are really the challenge. For the first time, we're really faced with 1,600 cell phones being in the building, and kids having access to 1,600 cell phones, and therefore they can tweet out, they can text parents, and they can do and say just about what's going on because they're afraid. I'm not criticizing them at all. They're children, they're afraid, they don't know what's going on. But I will say this, and I will stand by this, we have to let them know that there is a crisis because they have to govern themselves appropriately. So when something goes down at the high school, I'm not going to talk about the middle and elementary school because there are different protocols there. We do tell the students and the teachers that there's a lockdown. We don't tell them why, but we have to tell them that a situation is occurring. So we made that call. At that point, the principal is to call me, and I'll call the police first, and then call me about the lockdown. That occurred. At that point, I then let my staff know to notify the board and to be on call for the media. But all I know at that point is that there's a situation. I don't know what it is. My next role is to be at the school, which is what I did. And myself and Polly Sosinski, we went to the school to work with the principal and the administration to resolve the issue. At that point, our job is to find out what the issue is and not to communicate anymore. We do communicate that a situation is occurring, and that is where we will tweak this, but we have to communicate first that a situation has occurred. We can't communicate information about what has happened until we know fully what has happened. And that is the challenge with communication. Following that conversation, when we get to the building, there are a couple things that happen that I really want to highlight that is really important for us to think about. So when we get to the building and kids have tweeted out to their parents or they've said, Mom, something's going on, parents are rushing to the building. So that's created another challenge because our focus has to be on whatever the situation is. And we're not telling parents not to come to the aid of their children, not at all. In fact, that is the first thing that I would do. In fact, I have 2 grandchildren at the school, and part of the reason I went over there was for the 1,698, but I had 2 more that I was going to be responsible for myself. And so that's the first thing a parent does. But when that happens, it complicates the situation because at that point, the police officers who are now in control of the situation have to not only talk about what's happening in the building, but to divert resources outside of the building. And so what we're hopeful is that parents will communicate the calm to their children when they get those communications and say, you know, if there really is someone that is in the building that we have to actually take note of, you should be quiet and not saying something's going on. It's sort of be calm because truthfully, no one knows what's happening in real time. Following that, however, the first thing that we do is I communicate back to the same 3 people, Nicole Christian to talk to the board, my secretary to talk to the cabinet and to the front desk who's fielding calls, and to Anika Corbett, who then sends out a note to parents that this issue has been resolved, the protocols were followed, and please direct any calls that you have to us so that we can continue to resolve them. So that's our protocol. That's what we do. The challenge is that we have 1,600 voices communicating at the same time. And we really do have to figure out how to be the adults in the space to help our children resolve the issues because they're afraid. I'm not saying that they're afraid. And the first person that you call when you're afraid is your mama. The first thing that you call is your daddy or your grandmama or granddaddy, who's ever in your house. Absolutely, we get it. The challenge, however, is how the adults respond help us to really deal with the issue better. And so I fielded phone calls all day, and I will continue to talk to parents all day. That's our job, is to actually partner with the first and most important teacher in the lives of our children. The challenge that we have in this conversation always, though, is how miscommunication occurs and how we grow a culture that responds to crisis in a meaningful way without creating alarm. I hope that made some sense. But that's really what we do. And we did have to tweak our communication protocol. I'm not blowing smoke. We had to tweak it to make sure that it's really tight because we had not faced a situation where 1,600 phone messages were being sent as well. We had lots of parents who came and got their children today. We want you to know that our job is to make sure that your children come to school and get there safely and come home safe and a little smarter every day. So that is our primary role, and we take that very seriously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've got one more card for this segment. Excuse me, Mr. Will Hill. And Mr. Hill, the podium is right there, and your name and, well, we got your name, but your address for the record.
Okay. giving me an opportunity to speak. Will Hill, I'm at 29828 Spring Hill Drive in Southfield, 48076. So I'm a new resident to Southfield. This is my family's first time here. I have 2 young children and the school here, and I found it pretty alarming when I learned that 3 of my neighbors' children did not attend Southfield School. They were, went to other schools in the area that they can go to, and I was just curious if the board was aware of, call it lack of retention, I don't know what to call it, but aware of the issue, and if so, if there's anything being done to address, retaining residents' children within the school district.
Thank you. Mr. Hill is new to our community, I believe he said, and also wrote on the card. And because we typically don't respond and trying to stay within our lane, but also just echoing the fact that people oftentimes, Mr. Hill, will leave our school right until about 1st of November and decide, you know what, I want to give Southfield Public Schools another shot. Now, I'm not saying that's the case in your neighborhood, but we always are welcoming of your input, and our superintendent has several, interim superintendent has several instances throughout the month where he entertains and engages, plus just any type of social media engagement, plus our emails and phone numbers are also posted as well. But, I think once they're in the building, they learn a lot about our culture, but can be easily swayed away from us by bells and whistles sometimes. But certainly it's not lost on us. We think about it all the time. The last few meetings we've had, we've been asking about enrollment. So thank you very much for your comment.
I'll be in touch.
Excellent. All right. This is the time for the report of the Student Board representatives. We will start with Ms. Shannon Harper, Mr. John Charlie, then Mr. Keith Hudson. I have not heard yet on the status of Ms. Gordon, but if she gets here, of course, we'll give her the floor. So let's start with Ms. Shannon Harper.
Hi, how are you? My name is Shannon Harper, and I am the board representative. Can you hear me? Okay. I am the board representative for Southfield A&T. We did have 2 separate documents, but my partner and I actually shared each, and we're gonna go back and forth. So, I'm starting. You start, actually.
On Friday, November 17, 2017, Southfield A&T will be hosting its first blood drive of the year. It will be open to all students and staff.
Right, and actually this week, starting on Monday, we have a dress down. It started Monday, and the price is $5. All the proceeds will go to help the people in need during the holiday season. And if we reach our goal of $5,000, we will have another free dress that will actually be free during the week before Christmas break.
This year, we have had 2 on-sites so far. The first being Michigan State, and then we had one today with Grand Valley State. And we just want to congratulate all the students that will have been accepted to those 2 colleges. And we also have another on-site on November 21st with Wayne State University.
Right, and this month has been very busy for our Southfield A&T Marching Warriors. They have competed with Shaw, marched in Jackson State Homecoming Parade, and participated in the Oakland County Battle Festival.
We also would like to give a congratulations to all the Warriors, to all the fall Warrior sports for ending the season off strong. And we would like to welcome the winter sports as they start their season. And also, Southfield A&T Athletics will be adding a new sport. The sport is bowling, and they will have a girls and a boys team.
Very good.
Right. Ever since the beginning of the year, we are continuing the Hygiene Drive. Student Council, National Honor Society, and Business Professionals of America are continuing the hygiene drive for hurricane victims. If you have paper towels, deodorant, any type of hygiene products, you can drop them off in Ms. Dunn's room. It's in D House, or if you come to the school at all. We also have the canned food drive, which is going to be in help for needy families over the holidays. You can drop that off in Mr. Green's room. Any canned items will help.
On November 17th, the National Honor Society will be hosting its pajama party from 5 to 9 p.m. to celebrate the new members to the organization. Also, National Honor Society will be having its induction ceremony on November the 30th starting at 7 p.m. in the auditorium, and anyone is welcome to come.
Next, basketball season is starting, and the girls' basketball team first game is going to be November 28th. The boys' basketball first game is going to be in December. And the boys' swim team season is going to start, and they are having tryouts. If you like to try out, it will be held at university's campus in the university pool after school.
The class board for 2018 will be selling Southfield A&T blankets for $60. If anyone wants to purchase the blanket, they can see Miss Johnson in room B116. Lastly, on November 29th, we will be having a half day for Teacher Development Day. Thank you. This has been our board report.
Thank you, Shannon and John.
Hi, my name is Keith Hudson. I'm the UHSA student representative. Last Saturday, on November 11th, over 40 university students participated in the City of Southfield's Big Rake. Volunteers rake leaves for senior citizens for nearly 4 hours, and we are very proud of their hard work and generosity. Student Congress raised $1,572.43 from their breast care awareness fundraiser, so we just want to congratulate them. This week, November 13th to the 17th, the Green Club is having a poinsettia sale. On Tuesday, November 21st, the class of 2018 in Fashion Club will present a celebration of culture and fashion through the ages fashion show. UHSA students will get the chance to model their own clothes as long as it coincides with one of the show's themes: decades, date night, athletic wear, and seasons. The show will be held in the auditorium and tickets cost $5 with dress down included. There will be a UPTA meeting on Tuesday, November 21st at 6:30 in the library. Assistant Dean Patton will be giving a special presentation about instructional technology. University's annual leadership night is Friday, December 1st from 5 to 10 p.m. Students from their respective clubs and organizations will participate in team building activities. Applications for the 2018 through 2019 school year are being accepted through November 27th. On December 2nd, students will be taking the entrance exam, so we just want to wish them luck. The South Africa 2020 entrance meeting with Dean Williams is on December 7th at 6 p.m. in the Media Center, and on December 8th, the class of 2019 is hosting the very first lip sync battle. We would like to congratulate Mrs. Moss on being the Michigan First Credit Union Classroom Cash winner. She received 4 Chromebooks as well as a variety of young adult novels for her class. Congratulations, Ms. Moss. And we would also like to acknowledge Cameron Everett. Cameron is a figure skater who will perform at Noel Night this Friday, downtown Detroit. That's all.
Right.
Yes.
I just want to highlight the comment you made about the marching band participated in Jackson homecoming. That's Jackson State University in Mississippi. They participated in their annual homecoming, and I understand they were absolutely fabulous. And they had a great time there. Also, I have, hold on, another for Mr. Smith. Announcement, Fall Harvest Band Fest, Wednesday, November 22nd, hosted by the world-famous Glenn W. Levy Middle School, Marching Jaguars, Jeffrey Smith Sr. This will be at Southfield A&T. The tickets are $10 in advance, $5 at the door, celebrating Mr. Smith's 25 years of service as music educator. He's inviting everyone to attend, and that will also be a fabulous event. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, students. We appreciate your efforts in compiling those reports. And just want you to do me a favor. Tomorrow, when you get to school, I need you to find 3 students and just walk up to them and say, the board is proud of you. Just randomly. Absolutely. The board is proud of you. They may look at you a little crazy, but I just want them to know, we are really, really proud of all of you, and you don't hear it enough. So thank you so much. And if it is your desire, you're dismissed from the meeting.
Homework.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that leads right into segment 7 of our agenda, the report of the interim superintendent, starting with Derek Lopez, JD.
Good evening, everyone, again. So I wanted to put up the message, which is on our screen at this point in time. There are lots of vehicles by which we communicate as a district to our families and community members. And so if you would just go on to the message website and sign up for the newsletter, you'll get a weekly communication from the district about what's going on, about the programming that's occurring, that our students are highlighting each and every time we actually talk and speak. And you'll be able to see some of the great things that are happening in the district with our kids and families. The second thing I want to talk about is the Legacy Project. And so this is a conversation that we're beginning to have with our community about what does it mean to honor those folk upon whose shoulders we stand? What does it mean to honor those folk upon whose shoulders we stand? And this is a project of the Southfield Public Schools Foundation. We are actually beginning a conversation around 3 categories of nominees to create a legacy wall both at Southfield High School for the Arts and Technology and at the University High School campus. There will be mirrored walls. There will be the same walls at both schools because those schools at one time housed Southfield High School and Southfield Lathrop. And so we really do want to begin to sort of honor those folk upon whose shoulders we stand. And so there are 3 categories. If you would just click onto the Legacy Project link, we are accepting nominations for 3 categories of folk. So the first category of folk are those folk who are those in the athletic arena. And so for each of the decades of each of the schools, there will be an athlete that will be actually nominated or actually selected while the school is there that actually attended Southfield High School and one that attended Southfield Lathrop. So we know that both of those schools had rich history and legacy in athletics. So from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, there will be a nominee from Southfield High School. And from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, there will be a nominee for each of those decades from Southfield Lathrop. They will actually be inducted in their school colors, and we will actually be acknowledging their achievements as athletes in that space. The second category of folk are our warriors for education. Those are the men and women in the district who have been fighting on the front lines for our kids ever since the inception of the school district. And they will be nominated if they were parents in the PTAs who've really done really important work, if they are teachers at all of our schools, those that are closed, that are still open, if they are people that simply were community activists, and they said, hey, we know that they did right by our kids. If a parent or a teacher, former teacher in the community has a teacher in mind or an educator of that in mind, go to the website and nominate that person as a warrior for education at the website. And finally, the category Lifetime Achievement. It is for those alumni who have graduated from the Southfield Public Schools, whether it be Lathrop or High, and they've actually gone on to do amazing things. They've gone on to do great things and have actually represented the district really well in their profession. Those nominees will be coming from the committee itself and not from the community at large. And so that committee will consist of board members, past, current, and former. It will consist of alumni members. It will consist of teachers from all of our buildings, administrators from many of our buildings, and parents within the community who are not only parents but also alumni. This first group out, there will be about 50 folk divided up into the 3 different committees who will be working to select our nominees for an announcement, in January of who these people are, and for an induction on March the 7th of 2018. It really is about making sure that we actually acknowledge the history of our district in really meaningful ways and the people who have contributed to our success as a community. And so please go to the website. The nominations close on December the 3rd. This year, the nominations close, so please, if you can tag the link on your Facebook page, on your Twitter feed, on your Snapchat. I don't do Snapchat, so I don't know how to do that. But really tag it as alumni and men and women who, really the adults who made an impact in their lives, really need to be honored. And so we're dedicating this time to them in this legacy project. Our committee's first meeting is this Thursday, November the 16th at 6 to 8 p.m. In this very room, we'll be talking about the criteria, which are also on the website, as well as the process moving forward. And so we're just really excited about it, and we hope that we get to sort of galvanize our community around honoring those upon whose shoulders we stand. With that, I'm going to turn it over to a member of, does the board have any questions about that? I know I sent many communications to you, but do you have any questions about that?
The only question I have, Mr. Lopez, is there any rules or stipulations from the board being able to nominate someone?
Oh, no. No, there is no, so the interesting.
No, because if you're on the committee and you're
Yeah.
nominating someone, if there's some conflicting rules there.
There is no conflicting rule, and the reason being is because every one of the members of the committee actually have knowledge of people who've really touched their lives and touched the lives of our children. And so there is no stipulation around that, because at the end of the day, the committee itself will, by a supermajority vote, select the folk. And so those people you can recuse yourself if you nominate someone, or you can actually sort of think about it in that way. So there's no prohibition of members of the committee nominating anyone.
Good.
With that, I'm going to turn it over to members of our cabinet. I'm going to start with Ms. Hall, and she's going to begin with our Human Resources and Labor Relations report.
Absolutely. Good evening, board members.
Good evening. Good evening.
This evening, I want to provide you an overview on our staffing in the district. And what that will consist of is current openings and where they're located, and as well as long-term subs that are currently in the district in the length of time that they've been here. So starting off with our vacancies, we have a total of 11.8, but I'll go through them one by one. Adler has one Title I teacher available, open that we're recruiting for. Vandenberg has one early childhood development delayed classrooms teacher that we're recruiting for. Bernie has a .4 music teacher that will be shared as .4 with the Thompson School. Levy has a 1.0 social studies position. The teacher that was in that position is transferring to another building in the district. Levy also has a 1.0 science teacher that is voluntarily transferring to A&T effective on the 27th. Thompson has a 1.0 second grade teacher that is transferred to Aller, and a 1.0 science teacher that transferred to Stevenson. Additionally, there's a 1.0 social studies teacher that transferred to Levy, and there's a 1.0 IB coordinator which will be sharing district-wide responsibilities. We're currently tagged under our Thompson head count. Southfield A&T has a 1.0 culinary arts position that's been open for a while. And Southfield Regional has a 1.0 Spanish teacher, as that Spanish teacher transferred over to Southfield A&T. And additionally, they have a 1.0 art teacher for a total of 11.8 positions in the district currently that we're recruiting for. Any questions?
If I may, really quickly, a couple of those positions are added to Levy, because Levy actually had an increased enrollment that we did not anticipate for the year. And so we're actually adding a 1.0 English teacher and a 1.0 science teacher to that building because of the need to make sure that our core classes are at a reasonable rate for our kids and to ensure learning. In addition, we have contemplated, and we're actually at the point where we're actually about to close the culinary arts position completely at the high school and put those youngsters in other electives for the second half of the semester that are meaningful. We just simply have not had success in recruiting a culinary arts career and technical education teacher. That's just not something that is germane to this district. It's actually germane to the state. There is a huge conversation about whether or not we can actually figure out how to bring folk back from industry and attract them to career and technical education who actually can bring skills to our students. And so that's just a friendly addendum to the report that Ms. Hall gave.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. For long-term subs, these are subs that have been in our classroom for 30 days or more. McIntyre has one for the first grade. Thompson has one for science in second grade. University High has one for social studies. Of course, Southfield, we just spoke of the culinary arts. We have had a substitute in that classroom. Science and counselors. I should add that on my previous report, I'm showing that, we have new hires in process for those two positions. And of course, Southfield Regional has one for Spanish, and that's 8 across the district. Any questions about our long-term subs?
I just have one question.
Sure.
When we have long-term subs in buildings, particularly like you mentioned, the first grade classroom over at McIntyre, just for example, are these, although I know that they're not technically not Southfield Public Schools employees, but because they are immersed in our families, our cultures, our kids, are they still receiving the same type of PD opportunities and expected to uphold the same type of curriculum to a degree with our students?
Well, they are expected to uphold the same type of credentials and teachings as the other employees here in the district. I'm sure they do probably attend the TDs that we do monthly as a part of the staff, and Mr. Lopez, you can confirm that, certainly. But yes, that's what we expect. And if they're in the classroom over 45 days, they have to be certified, and that's in accordance to state guidelines as well, to ensure that they can continue to teach in the classroom. Okay.
If I may also, really quick, to your point, the other thing that happens when there's a long-term sub, and particularly at the high school, is that there's a shared sub-plan conversation. So teachers that are actually teaching that content area, we're compensating them to actually share their plans with the sub-teacher to make sure that our students at least have legitimate instruction going on during that time frame. Unfortunately, in culinary arts, we don't have another teacher,
right.
And so therefore we were struggling mightily even to get something of substance to them in that space. But for the core content areas, or those areas where there are teachers who are also teaching that area, there are shared sub-plans that occur. So there are shared lesson plans that occur for the subs.
Good. Any other questions on that?
And we were able to fill the role of the science teacher over at Southfield A&T.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are.
Yes.
Created a vacancy at Levy.
Right. It has.
We are.
Right.
A gap for us.
Right.
Right. But that's part of the 11.8.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes.
We mentioned last year in the contract that we were going to eliminate transfers within schools in such a late date as October. Wasn't that in the contract? I thought we had to put that in the contract because it disrupts a lot of learning.
Right. We have not removed that out of our contract, Ms. Robinson. That's still there.
I was going to inquire for, I guess, research purposes about possibilities of dual enrollment, kind of bridging the gap, perhaps, for this element. I was kind of looking at Mr. Poole. I thought he was getting ready to jump in with some resources.
Yeah, I do have resources, but I'd like to take it offline.
Sure, okay. Absolutely.
But I do have.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Sure. Sure, great. And then the personal action report, of course, is contained within the consent agenda for your review this evening as well. Thank you.
We're going to move to Kate Dankovich, and we're going to do finance.
Good evening. So, the board members, you have a copy of the actual PowerPoint with some of the notations included. We are already 4 months into this fiscal year, or 1/3 of the way along. Again, just as a reminder, this budget that we currently have, I am not.
Ryan can just move the slide.
Here it is. Are we moved? Okay. Oh, okay. So, again, this is just a reminder that our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. The budget that we are looking at was originally adopted in June. We are in the process of going through a revision that we will meet with the board later this month and be bringing it for board action in at the December meeting. I want to just move along. We're really just highlighting our general fund right now. Okay. So this, I'm sorry about it being a little small, but the under the blue area, we're really showing what the budget as it was adapted for our general fund operations. We have $81.9 million worth of revenues were projected and $83.5 million of expenditures, which utilizes about $1.6 million of the fund equity. At the time that the budget was adopted, we did not know exactly what our fund equity would be as of June 30th, so we had a projection of $12.2 million, which would have given us a fund equity at June 30th, 2018 of $10.6 million. What I've done for this report is to highlight under the pink column, we still have the same revenue and expenditure budget using $1.6 million of fund equity, but it now reflects the actual audited fund equity as presented by our external auditors, Plant Moran, back at the October meeting. So we ended the year with $2.9 million more of fund equity than was originally projected back in June. So our fund equity, the projection for June 30th based on the original budget is $13.5 million, which is about 16% of expenditures, which is well within line of what the board policy is. And it's a little bit more than that in terms of revenues, which is something that the state watches under early warning legislation. This just is a quick graphic showing where we are. The light blue is the revenues that have been posted to date of about $25 million compared to the budget. So we're at about 30%. And expenditures based on a cash basis, meaning the actual amount that we've paid out, is at roughly $15.8 million or 19% of the budget. And those numbers are fairly consistent with what we would have seen last year at the same time period. This next slide really just highlights that you're doing a great job. I appreciate that.
It's live.
Okay, for the revenues, as I said, we're at 30%. The bulk of that really is coming in the form of local sources, because we have received about 46% of our local property taxes. That was the July bill that went out, or the summer tax bill. And so we really have collected most of that. The winter tax bill will go out on December 1st. So state aid, we received our first payment on October 20th out of the 11 payments that we will be receiving throughout the year. So there is a great lag there. We have received some payments from Oakland schools. This represents the first payment of our PA-18 money for the year. And that really highlights
Okay, before you leave revenue, do these numbers, this is October 31st.
Correct.
How does the count day impact these numbers? Or
It doesn't at all at this point. Our first state aid payment that comes in is based on the audited spring count from spring 2017. We have a 10% weight on that, and it continues to use the fall of 2016's count. So they, as they make that first payment, it's higher than what we actually will see based on the count that'll be coming in once it's finally audited. But it'll true up at that point, be adjusted.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. On that memorandum we received, you mentioned a budget shortfall. You want to explain that to me? Because I didn't understand fully what that meant.
But as we look in the adjusted budget, or the originally adopted budget, we were looking at using a nearly $1.6 million of fund equity. And the reason that happens is because at the time that the budget was created, we were looking at expenditures being higher than the incoming revenues by that dollar amount. And in order to balance it out, we basically have to go into our, you call it rainy day fund, fund equity, whatever. We have to go into that reserve that we have in order to cover the costs anticipated to operate the district this year. But again, as we get into our board study session in a couple weeks, we originally projected revenues very conservatively. We used Middle City's head count projection, and we built our budget based on a loss of about 385 students for this fall as compared to the previous fall, and we actually ended up losing, I believe, don't quote me on this, I'm going off the top of my head, about 170. So we will be receiving additional funds for that, but as Mr. Lopez has also indicated, with some of those additional students, we also had to bring in some additional costs in order to educate those students. So, but it'll all come together, and we'll have a great dialogue about it in a few weeks.
Thank you.
The expenditures, we're at 19% again. This is on a cash basis, and we can see that's broken down into to compensation, which is our wage and benefits for our staff. A lot of the staff, really, they started their new contracts with the beginning of the school year, so that's really in September, and they will get paid throughout. So that's why that lags slightly when we look at it compared to the being a third of the way into the year at 33%, and we're seeing about 18% spent. But again, that's because of the modified accrual methodology that's used. And again, we are vetting through all the expenditures as well as a cabinet team. So are there any questions I can help you with at this point?
So also, I know that there was a need for a monthly cross-walking of the documents, and so we're working on what that looks like as we actually go through the budget adoption space. So that's why this looks very much like last month's, but December's should look markedly different after we go through the space, because we did hear from Trustee Rice and Trustee Hicks that there should be, as close as we possibly can, a monthly accounting of expenditures and revenues and where we are in those categories. And I think Ms. Stankovich provided a document of those things that we'll actually be monitoring, that we can actually control somewhat, but we will also sort of give you more of a crosswalk of what the actual budget looks like in terms of what the audit looks like, as opposed to just simply these pie charts here. So we're working on what that looks like as we move forward.
And in our last board session, it was requested for some feedback from us. I wasn't quite sure how you wanted us to provide that back.
So what we hope to do at the study session on the 28th is to really engage in that dialogue after we provide you with the proposed amended budget. What does it look like, and what do you want to see out of that moving forward, so that we can actually provide that document to you? So that's what that feedback would look like. But if you have some suggestions in the interim, please do not hesitate to send them to us through the board secretary, and we will actually begin to sort of think that through as well. Thank you. Ms. Lysinski?
Okay, so for our instructional and curriculum updates this evening, my first update is around the #HDPD curriculum framework professional development that we are undertaking this year. Our third session with staff will be November 29th, and all cohorts will be again meeting on that day across the district. Dr. Teague, along with the curriculum facilitators and the separate cohort facilitators, are identifying and refining a couple rubrics to send out to the cohort teams in this next meeting to be able to begin to evaluate their progress so far, and having kind of a benchmark to grade themselves, so to speak, on the development of their curriculum framework that they're undertaking, and help them to begin to set some goals and have some ideas about how they may want to proceed with that. So Dr. Teague met with that whole group yesterday, not only to debrief over the last meeting, but also to talk about the few rubrics that she's identified, and so that they could collaborate and decide the most important measures in those rubrics that they would want to move forward with as a team. The cohorts across the district will then begin their self-evaluation progress at the November HDPD meeting. They are by no means finished with their work. However, having had 3 meetings together, they've been able to establish collaborative practices. They've been able to talk about vertically aligned instructional strategies, different philosophical approaches to teaching different subjects, and so really have had the time to do that vertically and across buildings. And so they're now at a point where they can really begin to come together with common language and a common focus as they move forward. After that November meeting, their written documents that they have produced so far will be evaluated by Dr. Teague, myself, Mr. Lopez, the curriculum facilitators during the month of December and January. We're all going to take a look at where each team specifically is in the product that they have produced and help provide some reflection for that going back. And then in their January meeting, they will be coming up with their timeline and year-end goals that will be identified for each cohort. Of course, because the work that was done over with the summer, our K-12 math and ELA cohorts are further along in the process, as are our 610 science and 610 social studies. Some of the specialty or boutique classes, calculus and some of the advanced sciences as well as some of the lower ends of that social studies and science, because they started this work in September, may not be quite as far along, but we want every group to have a timeline and goals identified so that we all have a common sense of where they're progressing and where their products will be. I can tell you there is one group, the algebra teachers are already beginning to develop some of their common assessments and doing that work, as well as Dr. Teague is doing a learning walk survey of all the ELA classes at the high school level, especially at Southfield A&T, just to help get a better understanding of the practices going on in the classroom and to help move those meetings forward in the most productive way that we can. I will, before I go on to the next portion of the report, if there are any questions about the curriculum framework, I would be happy to answer.
Just one.
Yes.
Is there an update on the curriculum framework development for science and social studies?
So they are working along with everything else. By the meeting, our board meeting in January, I'll be able to have a more specific look at those documents, how they compare to the rubric, and what their benchmarked goals are for the remainder of the year. But they are working along, and there are several additional professional development activities that are going on, both with the NGSS standards at Oakland schools and so on. So there's a lot of learning going on and a lot of teachers reaching out to do some additional professional development around some of the new standards as we go through this work this year.
The January retreat that we generally have with the board will be a time where we really examine really deeply with the board.
Okay.
Then my second report is about PA 306, which is commonly known as the third grade reading law in the state. So our district parent letters will be sent home this Friday, November 17th. Parent information is now available on the district website with additional resources on the district website being posted as the week goes on. We're just making sure we're vetting all of those for correctness, accuracy, most updated form before we put them up one last time. So as we get those, Ms. Corbett will be adding those up this week. The individual reading intervention plans, or IRIPs, IRIPs, are currently being completed for our students that have identified skill gaps in grades kindergarten and first grade. It is our first graders who will be first subject to the constraints of this third grade reading law as it is currently written. And so the work right now is being focused on those kindergarten and first grade classrooms and teachers with professional development. And then as the year goes on, we'll be rolling that up into second and third grade, so they're prepared for the teachers are prepared for the legislation as it rolls up throughout the year. Parent meetings will begin the week of November 27th. Locations at schools and times will be announced by individual buildings, so those will be on the website as well as sent home via newsletters, robocalls, school messenger, social media, all the available forms of communication for those. There will be coming up a video put on our website to talk about PA 306. And just to give another learning modality for our parents, that not only are the resources available in a written form, but there also will be available in that visual audio form for them also. And then as Southfield, but we collectively as school systems begin dealing with PA 306, there will be further updates. There is some additional legislation being introduced in Lansing coming up regarding this act, as well as MDE updates, and also collaboration with districts across the state regarding, I know Trustee Love Smith has asked about some of the the teeth that go with this law, and that really is still being vetted out by districts and boards across the state. So as I'm meeting with different people across the state in different meetings, as Mr. Lopez is, or as Cindy Watson is with literacy coaches, we will just be gathering knowledge, input, and bringing those things back together. So as we have to recommend additional policy around this, we can give you a broader view of what others are doing, and as well as our recommendations at that point.
Two things.
Yes.
Which diagnostic assessment do we use?
So we use, our initial screener is the NWEA MAP assessment, and then for our diagnostic screeners, we use the DRA assessment, and we also use the MLPP series of assessments.
Okay, and I do appreciate you mentioning that about the updates, about the legislation and all of that, because the policy, obviously that's our task, is developing that policy for what that will look like. So I appreciate you for continuing those updates and getting that information. As you know, over the weekend we were attending our annual leadership conference, and one of the sessions I sat in on was, and I forget the county that did this, but they presented on their model, and that they use one head coach at their county level or their ISD level that goes out, that has designated coaches throughout the districts and the different schools. Are we using that same type of model, or what type of model are we using?
So Oakland Schools has a head literacy coach, Dr. Michelle Farah, and then she does trainings with literacy coaches in general around the county. We have a special arrangement with Oakland Schools where there are maybe 3 or 4 of us in Oakland County who have a special IGA with Oakland Schools around training and support with our literacy coaches. And so Cindy Watson receives some of that very individualized and specialized trainings, and is then able to take our building literacy coaches with her to those various state training meets. And Dr. Fair will also be coming to, as Mrs. Watson begins doing individual coaching within buildings. Right now, she's kind of doing the district-wide upload to get all of this going and started and pieces in movement. But as she goes forward, she'll be doing some individual coaching with teachers in the classroom as part of this whole literacy model. And so Dr. Fair will also be coming out to coach and help. So it's a real reflective cycle of improvement for everyone as we engage in this work. We are lucky to have literacy coaches like we do in the district, even though they're shared in the buildings. As I meet with other associate superintendents across the state, many districts are not in such a position to do that, and there are many unfunded mandates in this law that really leave districts in a crunch to provide the, to the exact letter of the law with this legislation.
It's so really, I think we actually have a more intense model because of our literacy coaches that are in place, and we actually are using Cindy Watson, because she has a specialty background in literacy, is really helping to really move this along with our 4 literacy coaches. So we actually have a team in Southfield working on this, whereas other places only have one person for the entire district. And so that model actually is one that many people are replicating, but because we actually already had the 4 literacy coaches in our building.
That's what it was. It was Saginaw.
Okay.
It sounds like this is the same.
Yeah. So, and Genesee County has the similar model, but because we already had those 4 coaches, Cindy Watson being able to bring that train-the-trainer model to those 4 coaches and developing a cohort amongst those coaches, as well as amongst our kindergarten and first grade teachers throughout the district, has really sort of put us in a very good space to really grow what we need to grow in order to make sure that our kids are successful.
Okay, and then one other question around that. So as we look at our ELA practices, obviously wanting to make sure that all of our kids are getting what they need, paying special attention to those kids who are going to have the individual reading plans. What are we doing in terms of like small group or differentiation to make sure that those kids are being pulled out and getting that individualized attention that they need?
So all of those best practices around literacy are taking place. In addition to the literacy coaches that Mrs. Watson has been working with, she can't take, when we go outside of the districts for training, she can't always take the Title I teachers with her. But when she does in-district trainings, she invites the Title I teachers as interventionists in ELA and mathematics, but interventionists in ELA, and also our ELL teachers and paras to come to those meetings, so that we're really sure we're infusing the fidelity of all of these early literacy best practices with all of the various component stakeholders who will be interacting with children. And so the next big part of this will be providing that upload and that training and that support in workshops and meetings with parents to help them do the partnering at home that needs to happen to support those literacy practices.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to start by saying I'm very happy that we have a Cindy Watson in the district.
Absolutely.
I'm very happy that we have a team, let me say that, but I know Cindy Watson's work personally, and I've heard it before, so I want to do it here. I did have two follow-up questions. My first question has been answered already, which is really around the initial screener assessment. So I've heard us with the NWA, DRA, and MLPP. My first question, though, is what type of scale are we using to try to determine those kids who do need intervention? And once we've determined that, what are the tier levels of intervention that those students will receive? Knowing that, I hear you, funding can be an issue with us in terms of the law and what is required for us to do, but kind of really even warrants my question even a little bit more.
So with the initial screener, the NWEA MAP assessment, we have started with that initial screener. This really falls into an entire flow chart of decision making. So the initial screener is for students who may score in the 40th percentile below in their ELA assessment. Then as we go into, for kindergartners, many kindergartners, depending on, sorry, let me back up. So the law says that if they're identified under the 40th percentile, that we need to administer the MLPP battery of assessments, and if appropriate, a DRA. A DRA is not always appropriate. For instance, if a student is not recognizing all their letters or letter sounds, if they're not understanding basic concepts of print, it is not appropriate to administer that first DRA level assessment. So often the first DRA assessment may wait till January when their skills have progressed a little further. What we've always done in our district, so the legislation says if they're below the 40th percentile, then you have to do these additional assessments. Our district practice has always been to always administer the DRA, if appropriate, and the MLPP battery to all students, whether or not they fall below that 50th percentile. So we could have a student who might be a little above the 40th, but then when we do the MLPP battery and, ooh, we notice there's some real gaps. I don't like using the word deficit or lack of proficiency when we're talking about 4- and 5-year-olds in reading. So they're just skill gaps or skill development that needs to happen. And so then as we get down into I haven't given the MLPP in several years, there are 8 components, I believe, specific, and most of them are 8 out of 10 question. And so they've set various levels, and it's really quite a chart to see where the levels are set at the fall level, what then they would expect for growth by the winter level, and again by the spring level, and then again what the DRA looks like. I can share that with you in more detail at a future study session or perhaps in January when we talk about curriculum in more detail, so that you could see those actual cut scores for all the different tests. I don't have those memorized yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that all?
Mr. Toko.
Good evening. I'm going to speak on the board action item regarding securing the architecture bid from Foresight Design to lead and oversee the replacement of the synthetic turf at the high school. Originally, the turf was installed in 2003, so currently the turf that is out there is 14 years old. The life of the turf is usually between 8 and 10 years. Ours is obviously 14 years old. Troy, Birmingham, Berkeley schools have all installed the same type at about the same time and have already replaced theirs in the past 2 years. So what we're looking at right now is a surface that we are patching and just making it to get to where we can actually play on it. The surface has been, played on by several schools or several activities and several teams for years. It's in bad shape. It's something that we definitely have to look at doing. That's why we're bringing this to the board. The next slide will go through the construction timetable, and why I'm including this is because if we are to use the capital improvement funds, we're under the gun with being the April 15th deadline to have to use those resources. So if you look at the timeline, the schematic design by the date that we're at right now is about 2 weeks, as I said, behind if we were to use that money. Talking to the architect who's involved in this, which is Mr. Bruce Lemons, who provided me this, said that we could make that time up. He has actually moved some things forward on his terms without any of the approval, obviously, that knowing that we'd still have to get through the board. He's doing it on his own, knowing that it still had to come here. The graphics review, the October 31st deadline, the aggregate perk testing, which basically is testing how the water would drain through the turf. We'd have to have that done before we actually could get a bid on that. Design and development, November 1st through a November 8th date. The owner DD review, which they actually would work on that. We would be part of that. Construction documents, which they would have to design for us. And then getting it out for bid by November 29th, which we will still be in that, and under that timeline right now. Bids due by December 15th, and just working with the contractors that I've been working with in this position, they have a lot of work out there right now. Contractors are busy, so obviously we'd want to get this secured as quick as possible if we could do this. The recommendation coming to or the interviews for the RFP between the 19th and the 21st, and the recommendation coming to the board by December 22nd, and board approval by January 9th. And that is, once again, to reiterate, if we were to use the capital funds based on that April 15th deadline, I believe, Kate, isn't it? April 20th deadline.
So this is coming to you as an information item this evening, and the question really becomes if this becomes a matter that we really want to take up this evening, and that's why he brought this evening. It really is. We've done lots of assessments of the space right now, and the architecture. In order for us to put it out to bid, there has to be an approval of the architect to actually draw up those specifications and to do those various tests, and that will be, of course, at the board's prerogative about bringing that forward tonight. If so. Not in 2 weeks at the information session or the board study session. So that's why we wanted Scott to talk about it. He's actually done about a month and a half worth of work trying to get this to this point, because it is a very complicated space that we're occupying.
So Mr. Lopez and Mr. Toko, a couple of observations. When I look at your PowerPoint as well as the written report on page 21 of our packet, I see a few inconsistencies. I just wanted to make sure that I'm on the same page. One, on the report, it mentions that the field is over 20 years old. I think that's more accurate. But on the PowerPoint, it lists that it's 14 years old. I think it's closer to 20 years. The second thing I observed in looking at both was that the ask in the information report is a dollar amount not to exceed $23,000. But in looking at the PowerPoint, if I'm reading that correctly on page 3, or is that baseball field?
It's baseball field.
It's baseball field.
Okay.
So this is about the 23,000 is for the architectural renderings of
So
it.
ignore the third page. Ignore this third page on the PowerPoint where it says baseball field.
Yeah, right.
That's a different.
Different topic. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So ignore that last point. But the question about the year of the football field.
The turf, I can answer that. The actual turf, I actually got confirmed because I'd heard through the I obviously didn't have any documents to go by, and I thought it was close to 20 years because we were one of the first field. We were actually the first field in Oakland County to have a turf field. By going back and talking to some of the past coaches, they said it's closer to 14 years. That's what they gave me an exact date. That's what was stated to me.
Okay. That's fine.
I know we were one, just from coming from an outsider, I knew that Southfield was one of the first school districts to have turf in Oakland County.
So the final question that I have, I know that we've had some discussions, and I'm not going to say names with whom, some people who may want to partner to offset some of this cost. Are those conversations still being held?
They are still being held. We are not there yet because of various interests that they actually have for their own institution.
Okay. Thank you.
2 questions. Well, the first one was going to be around the architectural landscape, and was there any reason why we couldn't have that as part of the bid for whomever the supplier was going to do the replacement of the football field turf? But it sounds like there's a requirement for us to even put the bid out. So I've got that.
Yep.
My second question would be, we know the amount for our capital expenditures at $1 million. With the expenditures that we've approved already, and inclusion of the baseball field and football field totally, if that's even a word, are we? It sounds like we may be at our $1 million mark.
We're about $890,000.
Make sure that we're on par with that, because that means that we don't have any more expenditures that we can approve, and if these are the prioritized expenditures for us that the board wants to move forward on, it'll take up that whole capital project fund amount.
You are correct in both of those statements. We're at about $890,000. If that's in fact what we do choose to do, which is about $110,000 for other capital projects throughout the district.
Any other questions regarding the football field? The second board action item is regarding the baseball field. This item has come to the board previously with the fencing and being able to bid for field improvements. The fencing is now complete on the field, if you've seen it, coming off the corner of Lasser and 10 Mile. It's actually turned out really good. I mean, it looks a heck of a lot better than it did before when it's fenced in with a green fence in the middle and the yellow topping, so it looks like a baseball field now. I put 2 of the companies up, Beck Sports Turf Specialties. They bid for field improvements. Basically, they would be, not to get in too much detail, but they would be cutting the lip down off of the outfield and replacing our Kentucky red clay, which would, if you look at Tiger Stadium and most of the stadiums, they have that red clay that kind of pops on the green grass. They would laser grade the infield, laser grade the lines all the way down to the outfield. Our field would look, and a college baseball team would be happy to play on our field if this improvement would be done. I mean, they would have no problem playing on a field just by the diagrams that I got from the architect that will be working on this. The start time, where we are kind of pressed because of weather, and Vex, the person who will be working on that, did give me a start time beginning of March, at the end of March and beginning early April. A lot of the stuff, if we could get this through, he could start now in regards to the laser grading of getting that lip off of the back of the infield, which is probably the most intense part of this this improvement, is getting that lip off, because they have to cut down and get that. He said he could get that started right now based on weather. The bid from his company was $24,442. I did get another bid from Davey Commercial Landscape at $34,765. And I did also want to say with the Beck Sports bid, he was including sod. The second one was not even including sod. I was telling Mr. Lopez about a 4-hour conversation, hit or miss, with the gentleman to try to get him where we needed to be with this. And I was glad that it's a $4,000 difference if you actually put the sod and not have to hydroseed it. So we would probably even be looking at something. We do have a sprinkler system, which I was not aware of, but I did go out there. We do have a sprinkler system for the infield. That green grass on that Kentucky red clay with those lines, that field would look very, very, very nice if that would be. I mean, and I think we're at just doing this in previous jobs. We've got, and I did explain this to Mr. Lopez, a very good price to be able to do what this company is willing to do for us.
So as just a clarification with respect to the third board action item as opposed to the first two. So the first action item, as I shared with you, did not have an accurate bid around what the work was on the field. And so that's just simply was not accurate. And this is more accurate given what we know needs to happen in order for that field to actually look and play as a high school baseball field, and even possibly one of our partners using it as their home field. And so that really is about that work. I will say that the additional monies that we're requesting from the fencing that we put up, it's an eye-popping $37,000 to get that done. It was eye-popping. There's $12,000 left from the original board authorization. There is a need to actually do ADA accessible stands next to the baseball field that have not been done. And so that $12,000 with the concrete base, et cetera, is really about fixing that spectator space up. The additional $24,000 that we're asking for from the board is for this field work in particular. And so that's why this board action item is not $12,000, but it's $24,000 to represent what we would have to do around the infield to actually get it done, to get it done professionally and well. Did that make sense? I wanted to be very clear. There are other ancillary things that we did not anticipate around spectator stands, and they do need to be ADA accessible, period, for families and youth coming to visit the games.
The architect also on the football field would help us with that.
The ADA specification.
With that ADA specs.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so the funds there, does that include securing that field? So in off seasons, we don't have anyone attempting to destroy the field?
So we actually have the external fence was the fence that's around the field is completely fenced in now.
Okay.
With gates.
Okay.
That can be locked.
Okay.
And so therefore cars cannot get onto that field and do donuts.
Right.
And we can secure the field year round. Now, of course, kids can climb the fence, but they won't be able to do nearly what a car can do.
Or a four-wheel
drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Four-wheeler.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Awesome.
Can we have somebody do a thorough investigation the next time we need work done on our football and baseball field, and just look at everything totally instead of piecemealing us information like this? Because it seems like every other month we have add this, add that. Look at the whole picture and give us one price for the entire field. And I hope we do the same thing for the football field and stop piecemealing it.
Ms. Freeman?
Okay, good evening, school board members. The report from support services is really for information only. So on page 22 and 23 in your packet, we'll start with pediatric health care or health consultants, which is our occupational therapy and physical therapy contract renewal for the school year 2017-18. Currently, we have 284 students that qualify for OT and or PT support in the community of Southfield. They support, I'm sorry? 284? 284 students that they currently support, and they range from birth to age 26. They're not only in our Southfield public schools, but our non-public schools, and some of our OT PTs are our primary service providers for our babies that are in home. They provide mobility support, support with assisting with fine motor and gross motor development. Our contract with Pediatric Health Consultants is not new. We have a long-standing relationship with them, and they are stellar in not only Southfield, but throughout the county of Oakland. So they support a number of our students, as well as our staff on direct or consult. The other contract that I'd like for you to consider as you review is our support for our nursing, and that comes from AmeriStaff. AmeriStaff currently provides support for our most fragile students. We have 71 students that are enrolled in Kennedy Learning Center. Many of our students require seizure support, as well as ventilation, tube feeding, suctioning, catheterization, as well as administration of medication. AmeriStaff has also partnered with us to support our bus monitors in terms of detecting when a student is in distress when they are on the ride to school. So the contract renewal for your consideration is in your packet, and I will entertain any questions that you may have.
This is an ongoing contract that we've utilized before.
Last year, I could not find a contract that was signed. You know, my time in the district has only been since March 6th of this year, but last year the actual contract was not signed for either of these providers. It was discovered for our nursing staff and AmeriStaff that we didn't have care plans in place for kids. Without care plans, our nurses cannot bill Medicaid and recoup services. So that was one of the things that I talked with the actual nursing provider to make sure that they were willing to sign off on our care plans so that our nurses could bill Medicaid and we could recoup some of the actual costs for AmeriStaff. So that currently is in place now. I have copies of those care plans for all of the students they provide support to at Kennedy Learning Center. For the OTPT contract, that contract was not renewed last year. They've been just providing support for our students without a signed agreement. So it's just really a good faith that they've been continuing to provide us support. But again, having a contract in place would help them just feel a little bit more secure and that they are welcomed in our district. I am working with Martha Ritchie, so it will go out for RFP at the beginning of next year to make sure that we are providing the most support for our students and being fiscally responsible.
So there was also no board action item the last couple of years for this either, which was discovered. And so therefore, we're bringing it to the board so that the board can actually authorize us to actually enter into an agreement that is actually a fiscally approved expenditure by us as the district. It is actually legally required for us to do this work for the 284 students that actually have IEPs, but we have not had an authorized contract nor board approval for at least 2 years.
So how do we get around that? That you think that would have been a state regulation. So how do we get around that for the last 2 years?
Get around what?
You said she couldn't find a contract and that the services was needed and that it's a part of the services that's required for kids with EIPs. So how do we?
I have no idea how we got around it. We just kept paying them, but the board did not authorize the contract. We kept paying them and they kept providing services, but no board action item was brought to the board, nor was one authorized the last 2 years.
So, I'm sorry, Trustee Robinson,
Go ahead.
So, it's not picking on you or anyone in particular, but one of my asks, and I'm sorry, I know I'm one of 7, but I'm speaking from a board treasurer perspective, right? We've had some poor practices that one thing that I've asked for is a list of all contracts that are scheduled to be renewed this year and next year, so that we can be more proactive instead of reactive.
Yes.
As you alluded to earlier, one of my concerns was I don't believe that we have the proper controls in place to understand how our schools are budgeting money and how we're actually incurring expenses against those projected financials.
Absolutely.
One of the parents, Mr. Hill, had asked earlier, what are we doing to improve the district, right? You can't improve district without money.
Absolutely.
And so the approach that I want us to really focus on is, are we leveraging and spending every dollar as effectively and efficiently as possible?
That's right.
And because the monies that we can better spend will allow us to add more services, more baseball fields, more arts, better food.
More value.
More value, correct. And we need to get that as soon as possible so we can determine and make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck. We don't want to go through the practice of continually to perpetually go with the same vendors, sole sourcing them because we've been doing it in the past. Agreed. We want to get the best value. So I ask again, we need a list of all contracts, no matter how long we've been dealing with them, so we know, one, are they up for renewal? Two, for us to assess, are they giving us the service that we expect? We have some work to do.
We absolutely do. And so this year, as per your, the lead of the board last year, we've onboarded 4 new vendors, four new external partners because of that work. What we've been doing this year in partnership with, as a cabinet, and that's why the 6 of us actually sit in the room in this very room for 5 or 6 hours during cabinet, is to actually go line by line in the budget and to actually identify those things that we are expending and making sure that there is value add and that we're not simply just spending money because we've always done it that way before. That's the first thing I'll say. The second thing is that at this board study session on the 28th of November, you will actually have all of the contracts and their dates where we actually entered those contracts as well as those dates of expiration for those contracts moving forward so that you can actually have those per your request. That was part of our work with respect to the revised budget amendment space. And finally, I'll just say this. I think having sat in the seat for the last 5 months, it's been an eye-opening experience for me. Whenever someone brings me something like Dr. Freeman brought me 2 weeks ago and said, we don't have a contract or a signed board action for this, yet they've been providing services for our kids, I alert you because it alarmed me. Because the alarm for me was not simply that we've been paying something that was unauthorized, but that they could choose not to provide services tomorrow for our children because they don't have a signed agreement.
And these services are too important for us not to.
Absolutely. And so that's the conversation that we should be having amongst ourselves as to how those controls were not in place prior so that we can make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. And so that's really why I alerted the board to what was going on in that email that I sent to you, because we really do have to secure this. Even though we're going out for RFP in January and February with this very company, we want to make sure that there's security on both sides.
Yeah, and these services are too mission critical to this to this operation and to this district.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. President, I'll remind us, one of the board actions that we approved some time ago was the vendor dashboard.
Yes.
That gives us the information that Trustee Hicks is requesting. We've kind of been requesting this for some time now, but we would know the contracted services for the entire district. We would know, according to their contract, how they were performing against their performance criteria. And we would get those type of reports on some sort of a cadence. I think we even talked about monthly. We desperately need that so that we, as a board, have our monitoring capabilities on, and when decisions like this need to be made, we're well informed and can make a data-informed decision.
Right.
So like my ask will be, again, that as we move into that session on the 28th, if we're getting this information, that we have some sort of even if it's just a shell, Mr. Lopez, for a particular contract that helps us to look at, this is what it's going to look like going forward, and then we can, filter in the other contracts from there.
Absolutely. As I said to you before, Scott Toko, as the Director of Operations, only began his job a month ago. And we needed someone in position to actually do that work of monitoring what was happening. So he was actually not given the title or the role or the authority to do that kind of work until a month ago. But what we have done in the interim was bring those vendors to the board so that they could report to you as to what the progress has been. Last month we actually had First Student, we had Champions. This coming month we will actually have Chartwells, and we will have Progressive Irrigation coming forward to talk with you. But that dashboard will be a snapshot of what should be happening throughout each month with each vendor. But we just have not gotten to that space because we didn't have someone in position officially who was able to do that work. But we are in complete agreement with that.
So, Ms. Freeman,
Yes.
The nurses that you're talking about, they're going to be working for the entire year?
Yes, they work year-round because Kennedy is a year-round school, so they're on the same calendar as Kennedy Learning Center.
Okay, thank you.
I have a second asked. I'd like to know, from a board trustee's perspective, we've got two informational items here that kind of extend us upward to close to $650K. There's been some other ones in the past, but I'd like to know our fund that we have for this, how are we decrementing against that so that we know moving forward as well?
Which extra amount of trustee Rice are you referring
For
to?
the special education expenditures.
Pediatric
Can we talk
health.
about that? Because
And
they've already been
staff.
budgeted.
That's $1 million right there.
They have been budgeted.
We've been spending that already, we just didn't know
Comparison to what we've tried to spend and what we've been spending, and I did have the opportunity to meet with Dr. Freeman to take a look at what are the need base on the window of time she's got to see, because we really don't have the statistics to say how many children were served in the past to correlate to the cost.
To build up like a trend.
To be able to watch it. So all we're really able to see is like our total dollars, and you know the rates really have not changed over the last time that I've been in this position. So really that's what we're looking at is the need base to help tie together the costs. And I believe that is an item that as we've looked at the amendment of the budget is a line item that is increasing.
It was, and so the sum of it is that the football field is not budgeted, but these services were budgeted in this upcoming budget. There will be like a slight increase in that, but they were budgeted in the aggregate for the services that we knew our children had in the past, and we just simply used the number from last year, which is, to Mr. Poole's comment at the study session, zero-based budgeting means you actually look at every item from the previous year and you start with what you need this year, not simply compounding on last year. What we've done in the past, quite frankly, is we've actually looked at what last year's budget was and said, this is our budget for next year, less some things moving forward. That should not be so, because if you don't ever go back down to the root of what the expenses and the needs are, you will compound errors. And I'll just put it that way. And so the whole hope this year is to actually benchmark, not only do a zero-based budgeting space, but benchmark all of the expenses that we're doing so that we can go forward. We'll actually say, okay, how do you balance this budget with the needs of the district and the aspirations of the district, as opposed to simply looking at what we've done in the past and make an assumption moving forward.
Good catch.
So that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. The enrollment data for Bussey Center for Early Childhood Education coming from the director's report from Janice Hill. We have 160 students and 160 slots with Head Start. It's all contained in an email I just forwarded in to you. GSRP, we have 48 slots filled out of 64. There's a waiting list for Head Start of 112, and for Great Start, a waiting list of 7. We've had 16 drops for Head Start and 4 drops for Great Start. You'll all be very pleased to hear that Head Start has an 88.1% average daily attendance, and remember our goal is 85%. And then Great Start is just knocking the things out the water at 94.7% with attendance for the previous month. Our child adult care food program, meals served for the month of October: Head Start breakfast 1,756, lunch 1,977, snacks 1,724. For health updates, there's 5 children that need vision screenings and 5 that need hearing screenings. 7 children need dental screenings. And there's a 45-day compliance window there. So for the 5-year strategic plan, restructuring of Head Start enrollment and GSRP, Vandenberg passed its environmental inspection. Licensing application has been submitted, and they are waiting on a date for licensing to complete the inspection before the Tiger Room can open at Vandenberg. Teachers are conducting weekly home visits, and a weekly socialization activity is planned until the classroom opens. Regarding self-assessment, they're currently on track with all the goals. Governor Snyder signed the bill into law to allow children whose birth dates are between September 2nd and December 1st to enroll in GSRP. The school is working on licensing for the Bernie location. We have 10 eligible families that are waiting to start at the Bernie location. And that is the pertinent information with regards to Janice's report. And then with regards to financials, and this packet is fine, but I wanted to call the board's attention to this one here, like the Excel doc. I don't know if it's easy to grab for you, Ron, but it basically highlights pretty easily the program award for board members. It's actually, we printed this for everyone, yeah. And so you'll see that the grant award itself is $1.3 million, and there's a little bit in there for training and technical assistance. You see the COLA portion there for a total of $1.3 million. When you factor in the local match of $339,000, you see where we get our total of 1.6. You can also see where our percent spent is at 8% for the year and 7% with regards to the local match of the in-kind. And of course, if you have any questions, Mr. Lopez's staff will be able to answer those with fidelity, and I look forward to seeing some of you in the next weekend or two when we have our governance training.
I have one question regarding the drops at the Early Childhood Center around our Head Start and our Great Start program. And I'm just taking it in here, but I'm hoping that you will find out and come back with a more thorough report or answer. Are families dropping because of the hours? And if so, because sometimes families need that up until 6 o'clock and because we don't provide that at Bussy. If that is the case, is there something we can do about it?
I'll ask the
If,
question.
in fact, that is the reason they're dropping.
So I don't know if Trustee Robinson or Joyce have any further insight, but I know from just policy council meeting reports from Ms. Hill in the past, a lot of times it's transportation, because we don't do busing there anymore, and then just being wooed away with other programs because we're very, very close to another program less than a mile north of us over there. I won't name it because it doesn't deserve free publicity. But certainly if Mr. Lopez wants to follow up with Ms. Hill, we'd all like to know.
You can do that.
That contains the Head Start portion of the report. That takes us into action items. This action item with regards to the personnel report and minutes being in the consent agenda, not to insult anyone's intelligence, but consent agenda, as a reminder, it's just a way to kind of tie a bunch of different loose ends into one, kind of save us some time. So for me, keeping the various reports in there seems smart and a good use of time, but if ever it comes up, we have the pleasure of taking certain things out of the consent agenda at any time. So having said that,
I move that we receive report 5627, personnel report, and that we approve the meeting minutes from October 4th, October 10th, October 24th, with any necessary corrections.
is there support?
Support.
Excellent. Madam Secretary, please call for the vote. Oh, discussion?
Yeah, I guess I'm still a little confused as to why we're receiving it after our legal opinion that we received.
Highlight again, because I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Yes, I'm just a little confused as to why we're receiving the personnel action report.
You mean the motion itself about
Yes.
receiving?
After the legal opinion that we received.
Remind me, what was the opinion?
That the board approves the personnel action report.
Approves?
Yeah. So at the last meeting, we kind of figured there's nothing to change. So we're still opening and approving it. I did not catch that in your wording, although it has been supported.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So I would like to rescind my motion. And
Whatever you-
I have to rescind it. Since he seconded, he has to agree to it.
Support. I'll support it.
Okay. So now I move that we open report 5627 and approve the personnel report, as well as approve minutes from October 4th, 10th, 24th, with any necessary corrections.
Additions and corrections.
Additions and corrections.
Support.
All right. Discussion? Madam Secretary? You can call for the vote. I think we're good for that.
Okay, just Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Trustee Paul?
Yes.
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Trustee Robinson?
Yes.
Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Trustee Charles?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to open and approve Report 5628, PS Ideas LLC, recording equipment at Southfield High School for the Arts and Technology.
I move that we open report number 5628, PS Ideas LLC, recording equipment at Southfield High School for the Arts and Technology, supporting goals 2 and 3.
Before anyone supports it, I just want to highlight that the motion is to open, meaning that after that, we then have to have another motion to approve. So just want to make sure.
We can do that, but we flipped back and forth on this thing
We
5 or
have.
6 different times.
We have.
So do you want to open and approve, or just open?
I would like to open and approve it.
Okay, open and approve. I move that we open and approve report number 5628, PS Ideas LLC, recording equipment at Southfield High School for the Arts and Technology, which supports goals 2 and 3.
Support.
Thank you. We just had the report, but any further dialogue on this? Oh, we didn't have a report. Mr.
We discussed it at the study session.
Right. Was there anything that anyone had unsettled that they needed information on? Hearing none. Madam Secretary?
Trustee Paul?
Yes.
Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Trustee Robinson?
Yes.
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Trustee Charles?
Yes.
Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Unanimous.
All right. And while under the label of action items, I just wanted to check with the board in terms of those information items that are a hair time sensitive in terms of trying to capture some of this decent weather. I personally do not want baseball parents coming to us in March wondering why we didn't do anything. So that one in particular, I'm very motivated to see as an action item today. Just wanted to check with the feeling of the board for A, B, C. Well, again, what's your pleasure? You kind of guide me on your direction.
Well, we're having a study session in another week or so.
It's in 2 weeks and a half.
2 weeks. So what difference would it make if we approve it then? 2 weeks?
The weather makes a significant difference in both of the baseball space and being able to do some things prior to the snow hitting with respect to the laser grading of the field. There are things that can be done on both scores with respect to the architect, as Mr. Toko talked about. Without the architect doing the renderings now, we are unable to meet the deadline possibly of actually having spent the money by April the 20th that we would actually have to allocate, or even if it was partially allocated from the Shano sale for the renovation of the field. And the other two issues, quite frankly, are contracts that are actually not that people are exercising and doing work within, but there just is a need for there to be some bow tying of that so that we can actually have those services secured for our families and students. It's the only reason there are information items here. As I told you before in previous meetings, it is my intent to bring information items to you at the study session to be voted on at the regular board meeting. But these items, each one of them was so time sensitive that I intended to bring them to the board so that you can act on them either today or on the 28th of November.
Other voices on this?
I have one question. I have one question on C and D, because those are special ed expenditures. We see there being some need for general fund to compensate or support these expenses.
I don't know that they're the IDA funds. They are not, I think these are general fund expenditures.
They are general funds. It's not IDA. It is all general fund, but it's under the umbrella of special education. It has been budgeted for. We've been really monitoring it very closely, And any time we needed to reallocate something, we were able to expect that there could be an increase because we have welcomed over 90 new families into our department alone.
That's 90 families of 920 plus. So we actually had a 10% increase in the number of
Than
families.
what we budgeted for.
Than we had previous year.
Okay.
So we do have the possibility to be reimbursed for.
Yeah, but we should also expect to get increases in this area because we do such a good job in this space. So,
Well,
and it's increased every year out there.
Board President, because it was duly noted and stated that these are services that have been ongoing except without a contract, for me, it only makes sense to move forward with providing action so that we actually have a legally binding contract in place to continue these services that are going to continue on anyway.
And Madam President, these are mission critical services.
Excuse me. I'm just going to stay on the baseball and football fields. Understanding the urgency with the winter weather, I wouldn't have any issue if we wanted to.
Okay. And then everyone has tallied up the sum total, just so that no one has palpitations as we move forward.
Well, we confirmed that this fits underneath the umbrella for our capital expenditure fund of the $1 million cap, so.
Yep.
If it's the board's pleasure.
All right.
Want to wipe it out?
Yeah, well.
So.
We never get a list of no.
What we could do is take care of A and B together and C and D together, since they kind of are working collaboratively, if there are no objections to that. So I'll entertain a motion to just approve, I suppose it is, Ms. Christian, to approve the recommendation of the superintendent for information item 9, letters A and B.
Madam President, if we approve this, this is going to wipe out the capital funding. So what do we do if we have a boiler failure?
So it won't, we're not approving the $638,000, Trustee Robinson, this evening. We're only approving the $23,000. The $638,000 expense will come back possibly with the RFP, and therefore we actually have to have that. So it's not, you're approving the $23,000 this evening. And we will actually have a short-term capital plan for you and a long-range capital plan for you at the November and December board meetings. I've already provided to you the expenses that were to date in September that we've used in the capital spaces, but on the November the 28th board meeting, I will be providing where we are and what our standing is right now, but this is the $23,000 expense, not the $638,000.
And you're going to provide us with a priority listing of repairs that are going to come out of that fund?
That can come out of that fund, yes, ma'am.
All right.
I move that we approve baseball field repair and upgrade at Southfield High School for the Arts and Technology not to exceed $25,000. And also approve landscape architect contract not to exceed $23,300.
Is there support?
Support.
Great. I think discussion has been had. Madam Secretary?
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Trustee Poole?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Trustee Robinson?
Yes.
Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Unanimous?
Thank you, unanimous. I'll entertain a motion to to approve items C and D under information item 9. That is mayor, staff, and pediatric health consultants.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
It states that these are contract renewals, and I was under the impression that no contract existed.
Right.
So these are entering contracts. We've actually been, these are not renewals technically. We're actually just entering into an agreement, sir.
Okay. And that's what I thought. But whoever makes that motion needs to clarify this is not a renewal. A contractual agreement.
So just I think you may have said it.
Your contract renewal.
What's the term through? That we're going to try to renew?
It's through the end of the year. It's through this June
End
30th.
of the school year.
End of the school year, June 30th, 28.
And it needs to be specified as well.
And is this where we said this would move us into a budget amendment?
No, so this item here has already been budgeted. Right.
These two?
These two have been
C&D.
budgeted. And the C&D have been budgeted in the general fund. We've just been paying them without a contractual agreement.
That's right.
What we also said is that there is a plan to RFP these two entities, the OT, PT services, as well as the nursing services, in February of this year as a part of our renewal process that we've actually begun to sort of actually evaluate what the contracts are. But these are services that are being rendered currently.
Does Ameris staff also cover speech pathologists?
No, they do
Yeah,
not.
they
It
do
is
not.
only nursing.
Only, okay.
Anything further? Do we have a motion?
I move that we execute a contract with Ameristaff Incorporated for 2017 through June 30th, 2018, not to exceed $120,164. I also move that pediatric health consultants contract be extended or executed through June 30th, 2018, with an amount not to exceed $533. Yeah.
Support.
Thank you. Obviously, there's time for discussion, but hearing none, let us call for the vote.
Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Trustee Charles?
Yes.
Trustee Poole?
Yes.
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Trustee Robertson?
Yes.
Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Myself, yes, unanimous.
Thank you, unanimous. Moving right along to item E, the purchasing report. You'll see that noted in the packet. This is also for information. And then our bill summary, number 817, supporting goal 7, also as information as well, highlighting the total disbursements for weeks ending October 13th and October 27th.
Here, that's right here.
All right.
24.
This makes me think of when Plant Moran was here and they said, oh, you got all of this? But that'll give you about 5 days of open doors. So, being mindful of that. All right, so we are at the latter portion of our meeting here where we will enter into public participation. Following that, we will entertain a motion for closed, and that is definitely to discuss labor relations updates, possibly legal as well, and then for the good and order, and then our future meetings. So with that, yes.
Is that in lieu of public participation?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was just kind of prefacing where we're heading.
Yep.
All right. Let us begin with Ms. Patrice Taylor. Following her will be Ms. Kathy Slate.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patrice Taylor, 20791 Delaware Street, Southfield, Michigan, 48233. The first thing I would like to say is that I truly appreciate our soundboard meetings. That is with the interim superintendent. And I say that because a lot is discussed. It may not be a lot of us there, but a lot is discussed to assist us on some things that's happening in the district and in specific our schools. With that said, the interim superintendent, we shared with him, myself, about IEPs and 504 students and the type of resources and the type of services that they receive. Unfortunately, it's not a lot especially for the 504 students, and we spoke about this. And I say that because with the situation that happened over at SAT, you actually said that some of the students were afraid. Some of them had the anxiety. There was no one available to speak to them. My son was one of them. He almost had an episode, and there was no one to speak to him. And I've learned that social workers and psychologists are paid up under the IEP line item. So they're not actually able to sit down and speak with students of general ed, and 504 students are considered general ed. I think that's a problem. Spoke with spoke with the interim superintendent regarding that. So with this situation that just occurred, it just expounds it. It's just a lot. So we really need to work on and focus on that. And let me just say this about the crisis today. I have a paper here that is actually the General Preparedness School Department Crisis Team Worksheet. This was done with the previous principal, 2015 and 2016. I received this because we had an actual PTA meeting regarding safety for the school. On this form, it says, letter D, PTO, PTA, PTSA representative to be notified, whomever that person is within the school. That was not done. So there were some issues and some procedures that were not followed. And I have spoke with my principal. That's why I'm here. We will be talking in detail about this. But this is very important because there was a form that was given and talked about. And unfortunately, some of those things weren't utilized. So there was a problem for me. And last but not least, I am hoping, it says in this particular document, that social workers, psychologists, team support, all of this is laid out in this particular document. And I'm hoping that we will have some type of general assembly or something to talk with our students about this because it affected them regardless. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lake?
Kathy Slate, 17539 Westland Avenue, Southfield, Michigan, 48075. I've been sitting over there contemplating whether or not I want to say anything. So I want to echo what my previous colleague talked about with these negotiations or lack thereof. I came to this district from Detroit in 2012. I received a step and an increase my first year. I have not received anything since there. So I calculated where I would be if I had, and I'm missing $23,485 worth of salary that I have not received. And the offer that has been given to us is insulting. To work as hard as we do every single day and not be compensated. You wonder why your attendance reports look the way they do with these buildings and people calling off. They're tired. They're looking for other jobs. I'm one of them. And I came here because I am a resident of this community. I like where I am. I've liked the principals and experience and the children and the parents that I've had at this school, but I can't continue to live with the salary that I'm getting. And that the fact that the insurance went to hard cap, so that's more money out of my check. So it's a pay cut. So a lot of people was like, well, don't say anything, you know, and I'm tired of sitting quietly. But you all need to compensate your teachers. Because I'm telling you, you think the attendance is bad in September? You just wait. People are leaving. They're looking right now. And you're going to have a lot of unqualified people here. And people just leave because they're just tired of not being appreciated. And one way you can show us is compensate us. We're not asking for the world. It's not even all of us who are even on steps. It's like 148 of us. They were given.
So it's like, it's just really disheartening to come to work every day and do our best still for the kids that we know need it, and not to be given and respected in the matter when it comes to my paycheck. But everything else is going up except for our salaries. To offer us a half a step, it's insulting. It's insulting. So I don't know what you can do, and the fact that the bus situation and the numbers that came up for that were almost $1 million over budget is just really, really disappointing. So, thank you.
Ms. Slate. I'll entertain a motion to go into close. I just want to highlight that this is not an adjournment. This is basically going to be a short recess while we go into close. So I didn't want anyone to think that this was some type of adjournment. But definitely, I'd like to entertain a motion to go into close to discuss the legal and labor update.
So move.
Support. Madam Secretary? Trustee Robinson?
Yes.
Trustee Rice?
Yes.
Trustee Poole?
Yes.
Trustee Hicks?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Trustee Joyce?
Yes.
Trustee Charles?
Yes. Unanimous? All right, so let's take 3 to 5 minutes briefly and reconvene for closed. Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.